All right, everybody, I'm Logan Alec, I'm a CPA, and this is my stimulus update for Friday, August 21st. Be sure to stick around until the end of the video because there is a new poll in the community tab in the channel that I want to tell you about and get your opinion on. So, the big stimulus stories this week are, number one, as I told you earlier this week, Republicans are reportedly coming up with a skinny stimulus bill, smaller than the HEALS Act, and this skinny bill reportedly doesn't include stimulus checks. You can check out my video from Sunday to hear more about what's reportedly in this bill. The full text has not yet been publicized, so we're still waiting for that. Number two big stimulus news this week is that every day, more and more rank and file Democrats, I'm not talking about Speaker Pelosi, not Leader Hoyer, not Minority Leader Schumer in the Senate, but every day, Democratic members of the House are calling on their leaders to be open to stimulus compromise and perhaps even piecemeal stimulus legislation, such as what Republicans seem to support. I told you 2 days ago about the letter to Pelosi and Hoyer, supported by over 100 House Democrats, to do a standalone bill, to vote on a standalone bill on unemployment tomorrow. I told you yesterday about Democratic Congresswoman Cindy Axne's letter to Pelosi to, quote, bring up a simplified, straightforward COVID-19 package, and today even more rank-and-file Democrats have sent their own letter to Nancy Pelosi and other congressional leaders urging compromise. We have not yet seen the full text of today's letter yet, so I'm just going on off a draft that supposedly Bloomberg got its hands on. This letter is from the so-called Blue Dog Coalition, which is comprised of 26 fiscally conservative Democrats. This letter apparently reads, as the House prepares to vote this weekend on a bill to protect the United States Postal Service, we urge you to restart bipartisan, bicameral negotiations on a fifth COVID-19 relief package that is commensurate with the scale of this public health and economic crisis. This letter reportedly speaks to the common ground between Democrats and Republicans with respect to stimulus, including extending the enhanced unemployment benefits and, yes, including stimulus checks. But here's the deal. Nancy Pelosi has basically said no to these more moderate Democrats in her caucus to take up stimulus tomorrow. As I told you earlier this week, Pelosi has called the House back to vote on a post-office measure tomorrow, and many Democrats, as well as Republicans, see this as a good time to perhaps talk stimulus again. I've told you repeatedly this week what Democrats have said, and indeed, some Republican members of the House feel the same. For example, Republican Congressman Darren LaHood said yesterday, I just think it's a bit ridiculous that we are going back to D.C. to vote on a postal bill when we ought to be voting on a stimulus bill. But Pelosi has basically said no to that notion. Yesterday on PBS NewsHour, Pelosi was asked about the letter supported by over 100 Democrats seeking a vote on a standalone unemployment stimulus bill tomorrow, along with the vote on the post office bill, and Pelosi basically shut down the notion of such a vote happening tomorrow. Here's the clip.
Let me ask you about COVID relief before the Congress. You've been struggling to strike a deal, as we know, with Republicans on this. But this week, more than 100 Democrats in the House signed a letter urging you to pass a smaller relief bill than what you have out there. You had agreed to go from $3 trillion down to $2 trillion. But they want to expand unemployment benefits. But basically, they're saying after the duration of this COVID emergency, that they would scale the support based on what the situation is in every state. But my question is, where do you stand on what they're asking you to do?
Well, they're asking us to do, and I fully, from a policy standpoint, have always supported the stabilization. That means that if you say when unemployment reaches a certain point, that you would automatically have unemployment benefits. That's a very positive initiative. I've encouraged that. I have welcomed that suggestion. I don't think strategically it's where we should go right now, because the Republicans would like to pass something like that and say, forget about it. Forget about state and local. Forget about our investments in stopping the virus. Forget about other initiatives about feeding the food insecure children in our country, vote by mail initiatives, and the rest. So again, I think that's something we should pass. I don't think the timing is for us to do it right now, because imagine that Republicans could take that into the Senate, put poison pills all over it. And it's hard to vote against extending unemployment benefits. And again, I think overwhelmingly our members who would not want to expand unemployment benefits. As I say, it's something I fully support and the stabilization. but not necessarily in the negotiation.
But just to clarify, then you don't really see an opening here to get this thing resolved in the coming few days.
No, I do. And I don't think it's done by giving them an out. I think it's done by making them come into the negotiation. Because really the most central point of it all, where people's needs are met the most, is the issue of state and local government. And they have said, we don't think one state should pay for another state's concerns. Well, we in California have been paying for other people's concerns for a long time, so have people in New York and the rest. That's the American way. We do it with great pride, not with any resentment. But they have said, oh, it's a tax issue. Why should people in one state help other people in another state? Welcome to the United States of America. But I appreciate what my members are doing. I support fully that. But I don't necessarily think the timing of it is right now. I think that's something that we do when we know we will get it signed without poison pills.
So in all that, Pelosi was basically saying that she agrees, obviously, that federally funded enhanced unemployment benefits should continue, but she doesn't want to do a standalone bill like Republicans would probably be open to. Like over 100 members of her own Democrats in the House are asking because she's afraid that doing such a thing would put her and Chuck Schumer in a poor position with respect to stimulus negotiations, because then they will have lost one of their key bargaining chips in future legislation, namely the unemployment. In the HEROES Act, Pelosi proposed the federal government giving nearly $1 trillion to state and local governments to support them during this crisis. She wants that. And Republicans know they're going to have to give her something there. Not $1 trillion if they want a deal to happen. But Pelosi doesn't want to lose one of her prized bargaining chips with a standalone unemployment bill. Pelosi is also afraid that if the House passes a standalone unemployment bill, that Republicans in the Senate would, as she put it, put poison pills in there, like, I don't know, maybe liability protection for businesses is a poison pill in Pelosi's mind. And then if that happens, and if that poisoned bill passes the Senate, then it would go back to the House for approval. And Pelosi knows that it would be a terrible political look for Democrats in the House to vote no on this theoretical unemployment bill, because the people will know it as the unemployment bill, because that's what everybody would be talking about. But it would be a bad look for House Democrats to vote no on the unemployment bill, not because they're opposed to extending the supercharged unemployment, but because they don't like that the liability protection, for example, that Republicans threw in there was in there. That's what Pelosi is afraid of. Now, in other stimulus news, it is reported that White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, one of the two Republican stimulus negotiators, the other, of course, being Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, will be on Capitol Hill tomorrow as House Democrats vote on USPS matters at Pelosi's discretion. And why is he there? It is thought that the reason is to attempt to talk to Democrat congresspeople about the next stimulus relief bill. But no, he probably won't be speaking to Pelosi herself, who, by the way, told David Axelrod yesterday on the X-Files that Meadows' role in the negotiations was to be Dr. No, and that she doesn't want to spend any time on him because it's just not worth it. Axelrod later asked Pelosi what she thought of Treasury Secretary Mnuchin as negotiator, and Pelosi said, "Why would we go into that?" So what's the takeaway here going into the weekend? It's that there are many in Congress who want action on both sides of the aisle. They want stimulus and they want it now. But it appears that the top brass is holding it up because they don't want to lose bargaining chips in negotiations. Also, we're still eagerly awaiting the text of the new skinny Republican stimulus bill because as I told you earlier this week, reports are that it apparently doesn't include stimulus checks, which would obviously be hugely unpopular. But of course, the text of the skinny bill has not yet been released. Now, my question for you, and there's a new poll in the community tab in the channel asking this question. The question in this poll is, who do you think is more to blame for the holdup on stimulus legislation, Democrats or Republicans? Yes, Democrats did pass the $3+ trillion HEROES Act in the House on May 15th, but many Democrats themselves have criticized the HEROES Act as not a serious effort at bipartisan legislation. I showed you Representative Axne's letter yesterday as just one example. Now, Republicans, on the other hand, dawdled for months, saying they had to wait and see if more stimulus is necessary, and once they finally decided it was, they decided to release their package in the last week of July, the week of the statutory end of the federally funded unemployment benefits. And over the course of negotiations, we saw both sides exhibiting extreme reluctance to compromise, though I will say that the Democrats did appear to be willing to give $1 trillion down if the Republicans were willing to give $1 trillion up as well, but of course, Republicans said no to that. But now here we are with Nancy Pelosi basically not really listening to the rank and file members of her own caucus in the House who are calling for standalone or skinnier stimulus bills. So please, Answer the poll. Please let me know which side you think is more to blame for the holdup of second stimulus legislation, Democrats or Republicans. Also, if you live in Oregon, make $4,000 a month or less pre-COVID, and your income has taken a hit due to COVID, and you're suffering financial hardship, and you're not current on unemployment payments, you can see the website to see what that means, then you may be eligible for the $500 Oregon stimulus checks. I'll put a link to that website with all the information you need in the description below about eligibility and how to apply. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you all have a great Friday and a great weekend, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.